Hey everyone, and welcome back to Gotcha Interact. In today's video, we're going to be talking and taking a look at Kazuha and talking about something similarly to how we talked about Raiden recently. Let's talk about Kazuha's value, where he stands in kind of the roster. This isn't a tier list. This is just kind of taking a broad look at Kazuha and really determining, is he still worth it? Is he still good at what he does? And honestly, the short answer to that question is going to be yes. He can still do his job very well. He still is, maybe not best in slot, but hey, we'll talk about that because we have a new character coming around the corner that really brings up the question of this, and that's why we are kind of making this video. And with Natlan in general, seeing the quote power creep, and it is there to an extent. That's once again, that's just a natural thing that I talked about even in the Raiden video. Power creep's just gonna happen. And so when we look at Kazuha, we have to kind of ask the same question about, is he still worth it? Once again, I think he is. But Vixen, I kind of want to hear your thoughts, and then I kind of want to jump off of that. Why do we think Kazuha is still a worth it type of character?
Well, I think there's a few things about Kazuha that make him extremely good. Obviously, as an animo character, he has a pretty good, actually, specifically to him, he has a pretty good grouping ability. So with his hold skill and the plunge right afterwards, he's got a pretty good plunging ability to bring some enemies together. So mobs and stuff like that are going to be pretty useful. Also, besides that, his burst is widely known to used for a lot of shredding of shields, as well as also his skills as well can also do the same factor. But usually that's there for a lot of multi-elemental shield kind of bosses or stuff like that, or even a lot of like just mages if there are a lot of different elements. Kazuha is usually the go-to character for that. So that's another reason. He also has a pretty good amount of damage considering he only goes into like elemental mastery and energy. Still puts out an okay amount of damage, especially for a full-blown support type character. Also, besides that, he has the elemental damage bonus part to his kit that he can help with the core 4 characters, Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, and Electro. So if he swirls their element with his passive talent, based on his elemental mastery, he'll give an elemental damage bonus, and then he can use Viridescent, which he can proc very easily. All that being said, this is usually why Kazuha has been an extremely good character over time, and why it's very difficult for other characters to take the limelight away from him. And we were kind of expecting, I don't know about you, but I was waiting for another animo character, because that's how it's kind of always been, the next animo character to kind of dethrone him.
Right.
I thought it was going to be very difficult, but now we're seeing another character, a Geo character actually, Xilonen, who's dethroning him. Now, and that's I think what this video is similar to another reason as to be about, because she's coming up pretty soon and he was just on the banner. So was it worth it for those people who pulled Kazuha? Was it still worth it? Whether constellation wise, he's got some pretty good early constellations. I think overall, like you said, Rift, a very basic answer. He's a worth it character still, no matter what. Everything I just mentioned is still usable today and still aims to be one of the best supports we have in the game, especially for those core 4 elements. He's basically put in almost every single one of those teams for damage testing, for anything really just damage, at least in the Abyss, to make sure your characters are doing more damage. He's just an amazing support that those core 4 can really use.
Yeah, and I think, once again, when we look at Kazuha, and a lot of people are just asking, is it still worth? And we have answered that, yes. But let's dive into the nitty-gritty of kind of why, or maybe even why not, because I can see a fair point being made to not, certain accounts not needing Kazuha. One of those reasons being you have another animo character that does this job, fills in the same role. Maybe you have Venti already. If you have Venti, then that's, that brings away from Kazuha just a little bit. Now, Kazuha still has that elemental damage bonus, and that's what makes Kazuha like Kazuha and so, just valuable. But with Xilonen coming around the corner, having just a unique kit that's similar to Kazuha and just a different way with, honestly, just very creative kit design with, decreasing elemental resistance, she's a very valid, and maybe in certain scenarios, maybe not even maybe, she is kind of a better unit in certain teams than Kazuha would be. And then why do I say that? I say that with Natlan's specific teams in mind because of the new mechanic with Night Soul Burst. Certain characters like Mualani, just being from Natlan, I think will prefer Xilonen over Kazuha because of that Night Soul Burst mechanic. And it's not that far off when you look at the numbers and stuff. She basically fills into the role that Kazuha fills. And the other thing that Xilonen does have over Kazuha is the fact that she can be used for Geo teams specifically. Navia can't really take use of Kazuha. but she can take use of Xilonen. And the same thing can be said for other Geo characters' damage and future Geo characters that are going to come out. So it is just nice to have, and that is a one-up that she does have over Kazuha. Does that completely change the game? Not really. If you are doing Geo teams, or you just have like a Geo account, I know some people are like that and they do Geo supremacy, then obviously you're probably already eyeballing Xilonen. You're going to pull her. And yes, she is the better option for that kind of thing. But when it comes to the core 4 elements, being Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, and Electro, I think they're pretty fair trade-offs. And I think it just, once again, heavily depends on the team itself. If you're using Mualani and you do have both Xilonen and Kazuha, then you probably want to use Xilonen. If you don't have either one and are thinking about which one to pull, if your account is newer and maybe has more Natlan characters in general, I think Xilonen might actually be the better option because of that, if Mualani was your first 5-star. The other thing to keep in mind is just future Natlan characters. We already have Kanish, we're about to get Xilonen, but there are going to be future DPSs, most likely. I can't say for sure, but Xilonen will be better, presumably, for those kinds of characters over Kazuha. But Kazuha still has a lot of value if you already have him. Like, I've had Kazuha for a long time, and so have you, Vixen. I don't think even if we were to both pull Xilonen, that's gonna pull away from Kazuha's playtime. Unless we're using a Natlan specific team. Like, I think that's really the takeaway with Xilonen and Kazuha comparisons. Because if it's not a Natlan team using Natlan characters, they're pretty even. Now, they have different things between each other. Like with Xilonen, it's all about shredding elemental resistance. Kazuha is giving a damage bonus. So it is buffing through different ways, where Kazuha is giving a direct damage bonus to the characters, which would be considered a buff, but also through Viridescent is technically debuffing the opponents because he's swirling on them, and that decreases their resistance to the element. Xilonen does the same thing, just in her kit. Naturally, she's decreasing resistance, which is technically a debuff because it's on the opponent and decreasing a stat of theirs. So there's just different ways. Depending on what you're even fighting, that could get really technical based on like if you want more damage bonus or you actually want the res shred. I don't really think that matters too much because it's Genshin. I just don't think it's gonna matter that much. So at the end of the day, my opinion between the two, when looking at Kazuha and Xilonen, they're pretty even. If you're using a Natlan team, I think Xilonen will be better. If you're not using a Natlan team, I don't think it matters, but Xilonen will be still probably just as good. You can expect similar results, like if you're doing the Nouvelette Farina. That's not a Natlan team, but I think Xilonen will still be a very good option there, and you will be crystallizing. You know, it's just trade-offs, right? You're getting some pros and then you have some cons, but the same thing can be said with the other character in question. So that's just how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, that was a lot, and I think overall, that's everything about that was pretty on par and pretty true. When looking overall at Xilonen's kit, obviously you've kind of already gone into this, and once again, I think you pretty much went over everything, but when looking at Xilonen, obviously, like we were talking about, she's probably going to have more damage in her skill in the Night Soul Blessing state. She's probably going to help a little bit more, obviously, because of Resistance Shred. Kazuha does Resistance Shred with Viridescent. I'm going to get a little bit more technical so you guys can kind of understand why they're on par. I know Rift kind of just said it, but I'm just going to kind of go into why. Xilonen has a Resistance Shred, as well as Kazuha gets it from his passive or his artifact set. The actual kit of Kazuha gives the elemental damage bonus, and the artifact set that you use with Xilonen, Scroll of the Cinder City Hero, is going to be using or giving elemental damage bonus as well. Now, the reason we're going to say that's better for those Natlan specific characters is because not only are you going to be able to trigger each other's Night Soul burst to help out with that kind of combo and team, but also being Geo characters, it's a lot easier to not have to worry about messing with a lot of those reactions. But the biggest part also is that in the Scroll of the Cinder City Hero set, you actually get more of a buff if the character is in their Night Soul Blessing state or whatnot. Like, when you're using Natlan characters, it's better for that set. I believe you can get up to a 40% elemental damage bonus based on the elemental reaction you make with Xilonen in this instance. So overall, giving that elemental damage bonus buff, and Kazuha can do the same. They're very even and on par with what you can get in between those, but I do think that the thing that Xilonen does bring to the table is Natlan characters, possibly a bit more damage, and I think they're both very easy to build. That is the kind of all equalizer as well. They are very on par with everything else. They're both very easy to build. It seems like Shilonen's just straight defense percent and defense in and also into ER. Kazuha's elemental mastery in ER. So a very easy kind of swing of whether kind of building each character. So I would agree. I don't think that with my Kazuha and Shilonen's going to get any less playtime. Like you said, Rift, I think, or Kazuha's not going to get any less playtime, and neither will Xilonen either. I think, like you said, those Natlan specific characters are going to take precedent with Xilonen, and the other teams, it's just going to allow me to have a Kazuha number 2. So if I had a second Kazuha on my account, it allows me to put her somewhere else as well. Even if it's not a Natlan specific team, I basically get to have 2 Kazuhas for the price of 1. So that's the kind of idea with having both these characters. And my thing is not everything has to be a contest. If you can have 2 amazing things at one time, that's really good for an account. So if you are later in the game and you have multiple DPS teams, you've probably had a point in time where you've wanted to put Kazuha on both sides of the Abyss. Or in multiple different scenarios of the Imaginarium Theater if you used up all of his 3 points or whatever. So getting Xilonen allows for another character that's going to be helpful in those instances to be another Kazuha again, basically.
Right. I totally agree with that. And honestly, who says you can't use them together? Like, I mean, just really,
true.
like, why not? I mean, yeah, it's maybe not like the most optimal team if you're in the Abyss setting, but that I think is a definite like thing to think about. Like you mentioned Imaginarium Theater. What if I want to do Nouvellette? I don't have my Farina because maybe I used her up already, or maybe I haven't got her yet. But I have Kazuha and Xilonen here already, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just do that? I'll get the Hydro Swirl. I'll do my Nouvellette skill, Hydro Swirl with Kazuha, and then use Xilonen, and then, you know, whatever other characters in the team, right? And you're just doing this crazy, like, hyper buffed Nouvellette without the Farina. So, like, you know, because when it comes to Imaginarium Theater, you know, things like that work. They just work because it's not as much vertical as it is horizontal, and you kind of just need to make sure that the team has synergy more than it has just vertical damage. So that is a valid point to make, just to, you know, bring in Imaginarium Theater. I think sometimes people, especially veteran players like ourselves even, tend to leave that out of the equation when thinking about value of characters because it is newer. We only really think about Spiral Abyss because that's what we've always thought about when it comes to value with characters. But now with Imaginarium Theater also being an endgame content and offering just as much, you know, just as many rewards as the Abyss does, it's something to also think about and can be forgotten or looked over. And know, if you've watched the video this far, we haven't forgot that Xilonen heals and Kazuha doesn't. So that's another thing that Xilonen just has, right? That you can replace your healer in the team with Xilonen, and you're getting a Kazuha level buff and a healer in one slot. So that's definitely a pro that she has that Kazuha can't necessarily fill. If you're using Kazuha, you know, you should be also making sure that you have a healer in the team. At the end of the day, different kits, and they have different synergies with different characters. Xilonen, it's going to be the Natlan characters. And so really, to set things kind of in stone, settle the dispute, I think if you have Kazuha, great. If you don't have Kazuha and want to pull Kazuha, go for it, because his value is still there. You don't absolutely need Xilonen, and you don't absolutely need Kazuha. It's really just filling a different role, whatever you need. I mean, you could pull Venti for all I care, and then you technically don't even need Kazuha. I mean, because Venti's going to fill the role of having that Viridescent Shred. You know, and I don't want to repeat everything we've kind of already said in the video, but just know that if you have a role filled, you don't need to upgrade it unless you have other roles filled, or unless you just want to. But I would focus more on filling a role you don't have before upgrading a role you do have. And that would go with anything, DPSs as well, different elements.
And if I was actually going to piggyback off of something you said a while ago, specifically talking about putting the 2 characters together, the elemental resistance shred you get from Xilonen at Crown is 36%. What you get from Viridescent is 40%. That's a 76% elemental resistance decrease. If it's the same element. Elemental damage bonus now, you get 40% from the, if it is a Natlan specific character, and they are, I believe, in their Knights of Blessing state or something like that. Basically, with that artifact set being kind of the way it is, it states that all nearby party members gain an elemental damage bonus if the equipping character is in their Knight's Soul Blessing state. When triggering the effect, then they will gain an additional 28% elemental damage bonus for the elemental types in their reaction. So actually, technically, you don't need, I want to kind of clear that up, you don't need other characters with the artifact set to be in their Night Soul Blessing state. As long as Xilonen, when she creates a reaction with that element, is in her Night Soul Blessing state, which you'll probably be doing, you're going to get the extra 28% elemental damage bonus on top of the 12 you already get normally. So keep that in mind. The artifact set actually doesn't. I just wanted to clear that up for clarification. But that means that you can get a maximum of 40% elemental damage bonus just by Xilonen being in her Night Soul Blessing state and creating a reaction. And then you can get at 900 elemental mastery with Kazuha times the 0.04% elemental damage bonus per elemental mastery with him from his passive talent. That's 36%. So 76% elemental resistance from artifact set from Kazuha and the Night Soul Blessing state in Xilonen, and 76% elemental damage bonus from artifact set from Xilonen and passive talent from Kazuha. So
That's crazy.
very, very good things. I just wanted to kind of bring that up because that was something interesting that you brought up, and
Right.
I kind of wanted to look at the numbers and see how that looked. Well, that's everything we've got talking about, I believe, Kazuha and Xilonen, kind of getting over that idea, which it's more or less a Kazuha video. We just happened to throw Xilonen in there as well. But overall, we believe that no matter what, Kazuha is still going to reign pretty strongly. He may not reign supreme above or below her. Maybe they're on par, whatever. He's still an extremely strong character, and that means that over time, he's still going to be worth the pull almost every single time he's on the banner, as long as you don't already have him, probably. Another reason, he's got some pretty strong cons, and so does Xilonen. So another way that they balance themselves out against each other. But if you guys did like the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Go ahead and let us know down in the comments if you guys agree, disagree, whatever. Go ahead and let us know. Also, please go ahead and check out our Discord as well. Thank you guys for watching the video again, and we'll see you guys in the next one.